To have you all. We are very pumped to host this event and have two wonderful operators and owners of District Brew Yards journey of opening this event and have two wonderful operators some adjustment to make it as amazing as it is, all the way to now planning to open a second venue, host this event and have maybe they'll tell us two wonderful operators. I think I just gave it to about 60 people or so, we'll see. Hopefully we'll hear some more this event and have. But before we officially kick things off, I just wanted to run through a few things that are going to be happening today. So very first and foremost, we are in District Brew Yards in a beautiful venue in Chicago, and I wanted to give a little thank you here to Toast, host this event and have that sponsored our events. Two wonderful partners. District Brew Yards has been using Toast POS since April 2019. Is that when you opened? Since April 2000. That sponsored our other venues.
Yes, other venues.
Two wonderful operators. Specifically, it's 2019.
Yes,
wonderful. Since April 2000. That sponsored our operators for us since at the time the Toast and PourMyBeer integration. Two wonderful operators. They definitely help us smooth things out. Since April 2000. That sponsored our today. So thank you both so much for that and all your. Two wonderful operators, and thank you for Toasters for sponsoring this event and being here since April 2000. That sponsored ours, and I think it's time to kick things off a little bit with yours back. Two wonderful operators, and thank you for Toasters for sponsoring this event and what led you to District Brew Yard.
Sure. So I'm Steve
for
Soble,
sponsoring this event and
operating bars and restaurants
for sponsoring this event and
last century, 1989.
For sponsoring this event.
Have opened probably 22 or 23 different locations through the years. Closed many as well, sold, whatever, but District Brew Yards was definitely the culmination of a lot of work and that experience, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's basically, I've been doing this for a long time. So.
And you like beers?
And I'm a big fan of beer, yes.
Awesome. What about you, Greg?
I'm equally as old as Steve. I joined Steve 22 years ago. Before that, I had experience with Let Us Entertain You, Levy Restaurants, Caesar's World, and Doubletree, working in hotels and restaurants my whole career. My job inside the company is to make Steve's vision come true. As Chief Operating Officer, I'm the one that deals with all the technical side. I also keep Steve's handicap, which is another important thing for the golf course. But that's really my job duties: make it work and keep his handicap. But I was instrumentally involved with Toast, as well as PourMyBeer and Josh, who's not with us today, the owner of PourMyBeer, in integrating PourMyBeer to what you see today in Toast. So if anybody has questions like that, I can also answer those. But that's who I am.
What is Toast?
Toast is a point of sale system.
Thank you. Sorry about that, but the great
It's
question.
also something you eat with breakfast, but in this case, it's a point of sale system.
I keep forgetting adding the POS to that. It's just so used to it. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to start with a very simple question, whichever of you wants to tackle it. Why did you think and why did you choose to have a self-pour over a traditional?
CV stir.
I knew there was going to be a pandemic back. No, I started with this vision or the idea that when you go into a place, especially we had a brewery, when you go into a brewery, I just felt like sometimes I felt judged by bartenders. What kind of beer do you want? I didn't want to be judged. So the whole concept here was no one comes between you and your beer. And I think that obviously had a big impact when the pandemic did hit, because we didn't know there was going to be staff shortages, issues with all the things we've been dealing with the past couple of years. But boy, was that an easy pivot for us, because no one comes between you and your beer literally meant no one touches your stuff. So we knew that we could see a sea change in labor markets, what we were dealing with minimum wage increases, and the whole industry is going through tumultuous change. We knew that was going to happen, in the sense that we knew that we had to pivot to a new model, because tipping was becoming just too big of an issue. We just felt like this is really dumb. Our back of the house people, the people who really are the heart and soul of our restaurants, we're not getting paid enough, and the people at the front of the house, we're getting constant increases because of tips relative to price increases. So we really felt like if we could create a concept that put together a different service model with different pricing, and we took that interaction away, we believed that we would be successful, and that it really came to pass, especially with the pandemic. So it was really a vision about how to better utilize labor. It's not about reducing labor for us, because we still have people here to help you, but it's really about changing the model and changing the interaction. Just as an aside, when you saw a lot of restaurant workers front of the house getting into arguments with customers about any variety of things, we take away that interaction. We're here to help. We're here to help you decide which beer to pour. We're here to help you pour the beer, but we're not in the traditional service model. And I think that has really been key to our success, is eliminating potential interactions with staff.
I think also, if any of you own, so our basis is that we're a brew pub. We own Burnt City, and Burnt City saw this as an opportunity from bringing other breweries into a cooperative. We wanted to, we had a production facility on the south side, and we had a brew pub on the north side. And we wanted to combine those two, and we had this idea, but then one of the operational problems that I saw was that to make a brew pub, I think, really work, or to make a concept really work, where you want to highlight different products, you have all those sampler glasses. And I'll never forget one of the first Sundays or Saturday nights at Burnt City Pub that we owned on Lincoln, and I had a bartender in front of me who had like maybe just about 6 tickets, but each ticket had 4 samplers. Each sampler had 4 glasses. You know how many little sample glasses that are? I mean, you're playing 3-card Monte. Which one is the lager? Which one is this? And all that sampling just took tremendous labor to deliver it to the customer on a board and get them to try something or to sample, and then they mix it up. I mean, what is the sheet? What's the order that we got here? Well, PourMyBeer eliminates all of that. You just go up to the screen, you see what you're pouring. I will tell you, from a statistical basis, the average pour here is 6.5 ounces. That means that on average, a customer pours 6.5 ounces into a glass. You will see plenty of people that pour this little, and then you'll see some people large glasses. Rarely, I mean, if you look at it, I think as a percentage, above 12 ounces, and we do have 16-ounce glasses, above 12 ounces only make up about 8-9% of our pours. It just, the system allows sampling. And we'll talk later, and I know Tanya has asked me this question, but you want to fit.
You're jumping the gun.
I know. You want to fit your concept to what the system can do best and use it as a tool. Yeah. Piggybacking on what Steve said, we really felt that we were going to be able to increase the ability to try things, not be judged for what beer you like or what drink you like, and then at the same time keep our labor costs within reason. I think you all understand the step cost of labor. District Brew Yards can serve our moderate night is the same labor as our busy night, and there's only a little bit more labor for our very busy night. We can open up. I mean, there were days where we open up, we got a line out the door. You bring 200 people in. Imagine doing that at a bar. Your bartenders are in hand-to-hand combat. You can bring 200 people in here in a half hour, and everybody can get their own beer. It's amazing.
If you ever get a chance to come back to Chicago and to experience this on a really busy night, it's amazing to watch. Really, it's the only way I can describe it. On your way to the opening, when you had the idea to open District Brew Yards, how long did it take you to take it from that idea that you probably were drinking those beers over all the way to the grand opening? What was the timeline?
It was a long process. I think we went through a lot of iterations. Greg mentioned we had a production brewery. We also had it started really with a trademark battle. We, as Burnt City, we were formerly Atlas Brewing Company. We lost our trademark. After we lost our trademark, our can company said we can no longer get pre-printed cans. So then we started using a labeler for our beer. And then it brought us to the point where we could do a whole bunch of different beers. So we started contract brewing, one of whom was ATB, Around the Bend. And then I went to, this is probably 2017, this is how long it took. 2017, I went to Revival Food Hall. I don't know if anybody's been there. It's an upscale food hall. But I asked myself a very simple question. How come there's no food hall for beer? And the answer was no one had done it. So this is what this is. That was the inspiration for what we did, the idea of bringing a collective of 4 different breweries operating out of the same place. And then it was a matter of trying to find the location. That's a whole nother thing, but that took a long time. And if anybody's been involved in real estate acquisition, we did sold the brew pub, had to do what's called a 1031 exchange. Basically, one thing led to another. We found this in the fall of 2017, and we didn't open until April of 2019. So that tells you just how long it took between permits, from concept to finished product, and all the changes that went through that whole process. It took us about 1.5 years from the time we closed on the property. I think if we didn't own the property, it would have taken a little less time, but it always takes from the time you say go to the time you actually get open. It's about 1 year. We mentioned that we have a second location in Wheeling. We're taking over an old Ram brewery. We haven't even started building it yet. We bought it. We first found it in sort of August, I want to say, is when we got it under contract. We closed in December, and we hope to be open in early June. So again, that's about 1 year, but by the time we're all done. So it takes a long time, but having everything ready to roll and everything ready to execute is critical. So we've been working on Wheeling even for the past 5 months, even before we bought it. So we'll be ready to roll, and hopefully it'll go in June.
And, and I'll foreshadow too. I'm sorry to take your questions, but you prepped me. But you were asking about how long does it take for licensing and how long does it take for permits. That really depends on each municipality you deal with. And for example, in our Wheeling location, we do not have a liquor license yet, and we do not have a permit to build yet. So there's a tremendous amount of preparatory work to bring us to this point. Now, we have plans. We have every reason to believe we will get the liquor license without any trouble.
We've got a hearing on Monday.
You got a hearing on Monday. And so by the time you get to this point in the process where you've already got your architectural plans, you know what your concept's going to be, we're hoping, as Steve just said, that we can turn this around in 16 to 18 weeks. I must tell you that I already bought my tanks for the brewery part of it way back in November. I bought my kitchen equipment package back in January because supply chain problems are real. I actually had to sign a contract with Toast to make sure I could get the point of sale equipment all the way back in December. Josh and I have signed a contract because PourMyBeer is 12 weeks now or something to that effect, 10 weeks. So it takes a while for you to conceptualize to open, but once you kind of get to this point where you're ready to, I've demoed and emptied out the building already. We hope to turn it around, and I know that's your question, in about 16 weeks. We think that is a reasonable time period, but the amount of work before then can vary greatly from how you're buying the building, what the lease negotiations are, how long it takes for you to work with your architect, so on and so forth. And we know that we have a really good partner in the municipality we're dealing with. They've told us they'll be able to turn permits around in 10 to 21 working days. That's not the city of Chicago, where you would basically be talking, 3 to 6 months?
3 to 6 months, not to mention the licensing in the city of Chicago is really difficult, including the state of Illinois, which takes forever too. So we got very lucky, but I won't go into that. So,
usually we're renting a building, so we negotiate free rent in that thing, but when we buy, we frantically want to open as quickly as possible because we're paying the mortgage. Banks don't give you free interest, by the way. That rarely happens. So we want to open as quickly as possible.
In the United States, every state really has a different laws, different restrictions, different regulations. Obviously, Illinois is different than some other attendees that we have over here. But what it really comes down to is be smart, your research ahead, and know what permits, what licenses you need. How many permits and licenses altogether did you need?
Well, you need a liquor license to operate, and permits are to build, the permit to build. And then you'll need a business license to operate, food license probably after building.
Food dispenser here, it's food, liquor on consumption on premise is what they call it.
Yeah.
We also have an off premise, so the ability to take packaged goods out. So those are the three main licenses, and then you have the state of Illinois. It regulates breweries, so you have to get that. We have what's called a brew pub license, and then on top of that, which we've already applied for as well, is a federal brewer's notice with the TTB. So that's the license to produce beer through the Department of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms. They run that program.
Now, Josh Goodman and PourMyBeer has done some work for you. And as we know, as we sit here today, the state of Michigan has some weird rule where you can only have table taps, and the state of Utah, this is why I love to ski there, will not allow PourMyBeer whatsoever. So if anybody's from Utah, thank you very much. You can't have a PourMyBeer in Utah.
We will work on changing that.
I get this question asked a lot, and I told Tanya that I would answer it sort of separately along the same line of permitting. To my knowledge, there's no permit about pour my own beer. And frankly, my suggestion, and I know Steve will maybe echo this in some sort of way, don't hide the fact that you're doing PourMyBeer, but don't ask anybody for permission. It's just a different way to serve beer or alcohol. It's not a new concept that needs a new license, that needs a new something. I don't see it that way. I'm sure there's some municipalities, if they were asked the question, they would then have to think about it, and then they would make up an answer. So the best strategy might be is don't ask the question, just get a liquor license, and this is your service model. I mean, we've presented to the city of Wheeling what we're doing. They know what we're doing. They've seen what we are. You don't hide anything, but people have asked me constantly, do you need a special permit to pour my beer? And the answer that I don't know of any municipality in the country that has a permit to require this. I do know of a few municipalities around here that have limited the amount of ounces you can serve to a customer in an hour. That's their right to do, but I wouldn't be going around asking municipalities, hey, can I do this? That would be my feeling. As we like to say, better to ask for forgiveness than permission, but I also think that you're not doing anything wrong by just providing another service model.
And the other thing is we have here as a policy, no one under 21 is allowed in. We do make exceptions to that. We kind of like to have the rule of no mobile babies. We don't like kids who are able to run around on their own. In Wheeling, we're going to have a little bit, since it's a suburban location, we're going to have families. We're going to have a section that's devoted just to where kids can be, but no unattended minors will be allowed in. That's going to be the rule. When you come in, you didn't go through the whole process, but we check everyone's ID. We match it up with, get a credit card to match it up with the PourMyBeer card, and that's how we roll. And it's been, by asking for the ID right away, you satisfy all of the requirements that you need that are given to us by the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. That pretty much prevents any underage people from getting in.
Okay. Next question, unless you want to say it.
No.
I get this question asked a lot, and definitely hear from our Rockstars at sales team also getting this question quite a bit. How do you know that you found the perfect location?
Well, Steve is location genius, so he'll tell
He
you.
is. And before you hop into that, also, how many locations have you seen before committing to this one? How many locations have you seen before committing to the Wheeling one? And what's your general take on this, and what are things to look for?
Definitely a little bit of art and a little bit of science. It's extremely hard. I've picked some terrible locations in my day, and I've picked ones that are so good I couldn't believe I picked it. The fact of the matter is it's hard. You've got zoning issues to deal with, which, especially for a brewery, very specific zoning requirements for the ability to manufacture alcohol. So that's number one. That's a question of where you can do it in terms of zoning. You will kiss a lot of proverbial frogs out there until you find something, and every deal, it's really an art. There's some science to it. I know that when we looked at in Wheeling, we looked at a number of different locations. The reason that one spoke to us is because it had a lot of infrastructure already there for a brewery, so it's very unique to our use. There's a brewery, it's a retail, everything is sort of checks a lot of boxes, and we knew it was zoned for it. We knew it would be okay to get a license there, and we knew a little bit about the numbers they did to justify the investment, which is a little unusual. So it really is, it's very difficult to pick locations. You look for a lot of different things, and it depends on what your use is and how you're doing it. It varies from, a lot of different things. We wanted a standalone location, especially when we started doing District Brew Yards. I had another location a little bit west of here, about a mile, that I had under contract. I couldn't get financing. So that's another thing. Can you get the financing for it? But I looked at, since I was doing, I think I mentioned this, a 1031 exchange, there's a lot of pressure involved because you have to, once you sell one building, you have 45 days to identify. You have 3 locations. So we found this location on day 42. So I was literally down to the wire, found the location, we got under contract, and it really took a really special phone call to the owner of this building, Alan, who I just said, hey, I met with you. I just want you to know we really want your building. And this was, I'll never forget, it was New Year's Eve was when the time ran out. And I called him up and I'm like, hey, just one last thing. He goes, good news, I'm going with you guys. So I was just like so relieved. And then we closed on the transaction. We had a sale leaseback situation where he needed more time. But we have 180 days to close from the 1031 exchange. We closed on day 178. So there was a lot of sweat and nerves with this one. Wheeling did not have that same kind of impact, although we had difficult sellers, which created some issues. But that's always the case. You're going to have difficult sellers. You're going to have difficult landlords. I'm a landlord. And it's nice to sit on both sides of the equation so you know what the other person's going through. But it's a complicated transaction, so it takes a while. And just look at a lot of different options is what I would say.
From my I come at it a much different way. And Steve and I complement each other pretty well on this. When you're looking at operations of how you're going to operate the product and maybe how you're going to market the product. All those things that Steve said, and the sixth sense, that he calls it his spidey sense of what's right for us, is what kind of carries the day. But it brings to answer what you guys got to do is you got to figure out what your concept is. I've said this a lot. I looked at every PourMyBeer self-serve tap system there was out there, and I chose PourMyBeer because I loved their technology. But the concept of pouring your own product has been out there for a while, but what is it for? I mean, are you trying to make a specialized beer tap room and cocktail tap room like Navigator is? That's a certain location. Are you combining? I've talked to a gentleman in Texas who's combining his PourMyBeer wall with a massive playground, simulated golf and bowling and whatever. And what he's doing on the wall is different than I would ever do. I mean, he's serving macro beers and other things. So
let's give him a shout out. What location is that?
He actually did not. He actually did not open as of yet, and it's still in confidence.
Still confidential.
Never heard of this.
Yeah, I know.
You guys didn't.
Josh has talked to him. I know that.
Okay. Keeping his vibe.
And he's hoping to open later this year. The pandemic really stopped him, but the whole point is figure out what you want to do and make your concept, and then find your location. And I mean, as Steve, all those answers he was given was, I need to find a brewery that's going to have 4 cooperative, breweries underneath each wall, making a bunch of different beers that has a, barbecue food concept. Our next concept actually is going to have a little bit more of a food hall along with this thing. That's what we're looking for. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for something in town that's, everybody knows your name? Are you looking for something in a entertainment district? Match what you're doing with PourMyBeer, what your offerings are, to what type of place you're looking for would be my recommendation there.
Awesome. Well, as you can tell, Greg has a lot of knowledge to share, so he's totally hopping into the next section. But
I just talk a lot. I don't know if it's knowledge.
We love that. We love that. But since we're still in the getting started section, let's just go into the next one on lease negotiation, which I know
that would be Steve.
You've definitely had some experience with that too. Lease negotiation is a big one. Definitely very stressful for a lot of new operators. Do you have any really key questions to ask? What do you focus on, and also what did you do differently for the second location of District Brew, if anything?
Well, I think in lease negotiations, the landlord's going to come at you with their sort of starting point, and let them start, because it'll give you a format with which to kind of negotiate the different terms. It's usually, dollars per square foot. there should be some sort of tenant allowance where they'll give you, for example, this place is 18,000 square feet. We would say, okay, we'd like, they offered $50 a foot in tenant improvement allowance, so you can do the math and figure out how much that's worth. And then you have free rent that you'll probably want to talk about. I mean, typically, you'll also want to have contingencies in your lease negotiations where you say it is contingent on us being able to get a license. That's critically important. And maybe tie the timing to that too, like tie it to when you're going to apply for your license, like that would be a hard number or a hard date. And then how long it takes. You can't really help how long a municipality is going to take. So it really runs the gamut. Is there equipment already in there? For example, in Wheeling, when we negotiated the purchase, we wanted to buy the equipment. Why did we want to buy the equipment? Well, when you buy the equipment, you get a lower real estate price. Equipment depreciates differently than real estate without getting too far in the weeds. And also that helps, especially in a county like Cook County, when you have a lower purchase price, you will then get a lower property tax rate. Again, getting really deep into the weeds on that. But all those things have implications. Those also, usually in a landlord situation, there would be something called CAM, which is common area maintenance. Also something that who's doing what within the lease. Are you part of a retail center? Are you a standalone location? All these things come into play, but definitely you want to get them to give you a letter of intent first to see what parameters they're dealing with. And then it's very important that you plug it in to your parameters on your business side. How much can I afford to pay? And I would say that in general, you want to be below a certain percentage for occupancy costs. We like to start around 8. This we can afford to pay a little bit more because we don't have as much labor. But I would recommend, no more than an 8% occupancy cost relative to your sales estimates between lease, property taxes, and insurance and CAM and all that. It's hard to do. I mean, sometimes you make some compromises, and you might, if you think you're really going to do a lot of business, you might have to pay a little bit more in CAMs. They're parking. So all those things come into play. You'll have your own parameters that you're dealing with, but in general, occupancy costs should be around, I would say if you go above 12%, it's going to be tough to make money.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Do you want to add anything to that?
He's Mr. Lease guy.
Okay, we're taking a break. Okay,
Move
perfect, got that.
Buy versus lease.
Huh?
Yes.
So buying requires a lot of capital up front. Leasing, you can put everything into your business. We decided to buy the real estate to sort of control our own destiny. I'm sort of in a unique situation. I'm a real estate person as well as a business person, so I think I'm very lucky in that I wear both hats a lot of times. Leasing is going to be an easier way to go because you don't need the startup capital that you would need buying. I will say though, if you can figure out a way to buy your real estate, I would always recommend that. Always. Now, comes into play, we just went through a massive pandemic. When you're buying real estate, you have no one to go to but the bank for a break during the lockdown, which no one ever anticipated that. I will say all of my banks worked with me. We went to a straight up 6-month, actually a year interest-only loan. Banks were pretty willing to work with people. Obviously, when the PPP came in, we were able to make that back up. So that really was helpful. But in general, pandemic notwithstanding, in general, when you control your own destiny, it's a great thing. I would also recommend, we did the deal in Wheeling through something called a 504 SBA loan, which requires a lot less capital. I recommend, if you can get that, it's really hard to get. It's very specific, but it's like a 10% down payment, which is great. It's incredibly good rates. So I would recommend that if you can pull it off. And if anybody has questions about lenders, there's a few lenders that sort of specialize in these 504 loans. Otherwise, we did this deal with a tenant allowance. I was part of the real estate side, so I was negotiating both sides of the equation. We had a tenant allowance, and then we had what's called a 7A loan through the SBA, which was really more of a traditional equipment loan. So keep that in mind.
I would add that if you can buy and you have the capital to do that, and you can do a 504 and you can put it together, it is absolutely in your best interest. And I'm going to go form it like looking at a lease. One of the things that surprises me is I'll sometimes get calls from people in the industry. When you have a commercial lease it's not like a residential lease, right? When you rent an apartment and your dishwasher breaks, you call up the landlord and they replace it, right? When you have a commercial lease and your air conditioning system breaks, the landlord says, well, that's unless you negotiated that they're going to take care of that, which is in our experience a rarity. You're going to pay for the repairs on the machine. They might give you some help. They might help out. We've had some great landlords that have said, hey, we'll pitch in a little bit here, a little bit there. But in many ways, you're still responsible for so much of the ownership of the property, and you're fixing it up for the person who's leasing it to you. That's kind of that. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, sometimes you can't afford to purchase in a great traffic foot area. You just won't be able to do it. So do you want to get those greater sales and maybe build up a profit and negotiate a few options on your lease? By all means, do so. But, I mean, obviously Steve knows a lot about real estate. It's what his forte is. And it is, quick to point out, we laugh about it all the time. I mean, Ray Kroc was really in the real estate business, not McDonald's business, if you want to look at it. And that's why Ray Kroc became one of the most, richest people in the world. Because McDonald's concept was, we're going to buy the real estate and then lease it back to ourselves. And that's how they made their money.
You do any marketing and advertising before you really open the door?
We did nothing. We did some PR, and really we wanted to do a soft opening, and we pitched the story. We did have a PR person, and still do, Lacey Irby, who's on her own, but she pitched the story to a couple of writers because this was such a unique concept. And Josh Noel from the Tribune really got the scoop. He came in, saw everything, really liked the idea, and wrote about it in the Trib, and we were like, okay, well, that's all we're doing until we figure out what happens. We got to get the operation going. We didn't have time for that. We literally opened the next day. We had a huge crowd come by, and really that was it. And then beyond PR, we developed our own social media. We have our own, we did for a long time, our own person, just social media, Twitter, all that, Instagram, and so forth. That was a big part of what we did. And then the other part of what we did that we're still developing is through Toast, is our Suds Club, which is our membership program, which is really critical for us to market to our customers. We've got a great rate of just even opening these emails is really incredible. So between social media, PR, direct marketing through Toast, we've really been able to get our business to a really great spot, and we think we have the tools to get to the next level.
The point of sale system, aside from having great financial capture and some robust data that you want to use, today comes with all the widgets that you need. Toast stole my idea. I mean, I thought of this long ago. And basically they now have just, hey, you need online ordering? Got that for you. You need email marketing? Got that for you. And you need a frequent diner program? Got that for you too. And every one of those modules that the point of sale can add to that, you get to use with the PourMyBeer system because they talk to one another. So we basically ask customers on the way out, if they would like to join the program. They enter an email. They immediately get 100 points, which is worth $10. And for every 100 points that they spend here, which is tied to their credit card, they get another $10. We currently have over 6,200 members and growing. We are in our next concept. We'll be using Toast kiosks, and I know that they're sitting over there and they can't wait to integrate PourMyBeer into the kiosks, right? That's what you're doing for me? No. They say they
are.
No
pressure.
Yeah. No pressure at all. They say they might, which would be really wonderful because then, the kiosk never forgets to ask, hey, do you want to be a member? And it's really great. It's great technology. We actually use Toast kiosks at another one of our stores. So that marketing really helps a lot. And I want to add something to what Steve said. We did do a lot of significant social media work coming, right? That's what we did. And the one thing about marketing, and it's actually one of the reasons why you want to choose PourMyBeer, you can give me money later, is that Tanya and her team are spectacular. They're going to get the word out for you because obviously your success is theirs. And Tanya lived back over there at the table there for a few weeks, along with Duncan, who's now still in Australia, last we know. And they just made sure that their friends and people that they knew and people in the business knew that we were here. And you know what? They didn't. I really figured out later that they just didn't do that for me. I was thinking we were special, but I guess we really weren't. They do it for every one of them. Every time I see a PourMyBeer store open, there's their marketing team, and they want your success to happen. And I can't tell you how valuable that was. This one is like top Yelper over here in the world. I mean, she's got European friends, Colorado friends, everything. And the amount of people she just drew into the place was amazing. And you need something like that. You need that support in the industry. I would say that actually Toast, Mila lives just down the block over here. She's a constant member. So the vendors that you're using, even food vendors or beer vendors or whoever, are really great sources of marketing your product. Their success, your success will be their success. And I can't think of many companies I have dealt with in my long career, other than PourMyBeer and Tanya and her team, to really help get the word out. Even if they're not physically there, there's lots of stuff you can do to make sure people know you're open and make sure they know what you're doing. So that's another reason to use PourMyBeer.
I should have brought some tissues. I did not know it was going to get so emotional.
That's
Nice,
all right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hopefully Josh will hear this later.
I tell him all the time. You know,
Thank you. Appreciate it. We're almost done with the getting started section. From the time of completion of installation, having toast, having us in, having everything set, how long did it take you to open? When you had everything set and ready to go, were there still some weeks, some months that something was blocking you, that you were waiting for certain things to open?
It depends on where your expertise is. As Steve has said, he said he opened up 22 restaurants. I've been a part of 15 of those.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of experience that we have had in opening is pretty substantial. If I could give one easy sample of what you need to do to open well, and that is you got to have in your mind how you want your staff to act. And this was entirely from ground up. In the past, I went to my computer, I pulled up steps of service, server training, bartender training, busboy training, printed it out, and there you go. Here was a whole new concept that we had to figure out. And what we figured out from the beginning was that to make this feel less intimidating, we had to have a great script at the front door, telling people when they came in, hey, hi, how are you doing? We're a PourMyBeer concept. We're a cashless facility. We're a tipless facility. We're going to take your credit card and we're going to tie it to your beer card. Your beer card can pour your own beer. It can actually be used to buy food over here. And on the way out, you can buy some cans. We had a great explanation going on. And at first, we spent a lot of time at the front really getting that message clear to the customer. And then they came back, and at first we actually had somebody positioned at each wall that maybe explained it again or helped with that or discussed it and so on and so forth. Everything's charged by the ounce, so on and so forth. Today, we have the concierge station. So at the front, we try to keep it a little bit quicker because we got to get a lot of people in here. Sometimes we have lines out the door. We got to keep it a little bit quicker. So, hey, I'm going to take a credit card. We're going to tie it to your beer card, go up to the top of the ramp and talk to the concierge. They'll show you how to do it. In our new concept, we have actually created what I'm going to call a super check-in area, where we actually have you checking in. You can also buy stuff. And then as you walk your way into the hall, we now have a concierge station that will have a mock-up of the wall so that you can show the customers what to do. In fact, at the concierge station, we have a little mock-up of how to put your card, because that's the biggest pinch point. The idiots don't know how to use the cards. I say that lovingly. Everybody swipes it or they scan it or they have it in their pocket and they try to use it or whatever. Just got to set it on there.
They don't listen.
They don't listen. So we show that in our new model, we're actually going to have a mock-up of not only the card, it'll be a working screen that'll show you how the money will pop up, how you use it, so that we can get that all explained at the front and then go along your way trying your beer. So, we were ready to open. Duncan finished the install on Tuesday, and Wednesday night we were open.
So what were some of the biggest lessons that you've learned when you opened your door, whether that's good or bad? If you can talk a little bit more about that.
Well, the biggest lesson you're going to learn from the PourMyBeer thing is that people are not bartenders. The biggest problem in this industry of restaurant people that I talk to is that they hate PourMyBeer because they think like a bartender. And that is the wrong way to be, in my view. You want to train your staff and yourself to stop thinking like bartenders and think like customers, and how customers might want to look at things, how you put things on the wall, the names you use. But the most important thing is when they go up there and they put their card in there, and inevitably they don't, they open up the tap and they create foam, or they don't pour enough, or they didn't know how it worked, or whatever. You've got to be there as a helpful hand to fix all those problems. We don't comp and void that where you would as a bartender. Oh, I spilled a glass. Oh, I need a comp, I need a void. What we do is we just pull out a card and we pour some more beer for the customer. That was the first thing we had to learn, is that if somebody had a problem at the wall with foam, if somebody has a problem at the wall with nothing came out, or whatever the case may be, you just want to go over there and help them and then fill up their glass. The finances of PourMyBeer are like this. You're going to buy a $200 keg, and that $200 keg, if you're doing it in our system where all the prices worked in, there's no tipping, whatever, you should probably get about $1,400 to $1,500 in sales for $200. That's the way that this system is the biggest impact. All of our workers here make $18, $20, $20 an hour. There is no tipping. There is no cash. So one $200 keg creates $1,500 worth of sales. That is better than the $200 keg you bought at the bar, right? And that, just quick math, is going to create you about $800. Because when you sell it with a bartender, you're going to sell it at less of a price. The bartender is going to put the tip on it, and people are going to match pint price. I'd like all of you to do one little sample here. How much is 16 times 63? I mean, nobody does that at the wall. Yeah. Nobody figures out that 16 times 63 is like a $9 pint, because nobody pours pints. So you're able to charge more and get more for each keg that you bring in. So when you have those problems, getting back to the original thing, just pour them some more beer. That was the first lesson we learned. That was really difficult. I think the second lesson we learned is that you had to be very systematic at the front door. You have to absolutely drill that script, we call it, into everybody who works at the front door's head, because you're talking about money. And customers are confused. They don't know how much what this is going to be. How is it going to go on my card? What's going to happen? You want to be systematic. At the end of the night, in the first couple of weeks, I was probably here until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning every night, closing out checks that we couldn't find because of mistakes we were making, because we didn't explain things to customers well, and we just issued a new card when it didn't work, or we lost a card and just gave a new one to a customer. We didn't have everything solid of how it works, and basically I had to figure out at the end of the night, well, this should have gone there and this should have gone there. Now I will tell you, that's before Toast and PourMyBeer got together and made the automatic transfer. Since that time, you took away 90% of those problems. But it was a lesson to learn that be really sure about what you're going to say at the front door, and really sure how you get that across to your customer.
Awesome.
Lesson
number 3? Is there any lesson number 3?
Is there a lesson number 3? Well, I was going to say one thing that we learned also was closing out checks through the night. When you're so busy, we could overwhelm the system.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing you were doing. We just had too many cards in the system. That was a good problem to have. It wasn't good for Greg because he was here till 4 or 5, but I was very excited about it. That was another one. I'm trying to think what else would have been.
Well, we did learn that one thing is that, so how you deal with cards or wristbands or whatever you're going to buy, we like the cards. And I also, the strategy, there's a lot of strategies out there. My managers think that if you give out more cards, like if 2 people come in and you give them 2 cards, that they will actually pour more. I haven't seen that statistically, to be honest with you. I think that's more anecdotally. We were at first then realized that we didn't want to give out everybody a card, that if a couple came in, here's a card, share it. We used to have the joke, well, it's just going to keep you together more as a couple. And that worked, and I think that's, I prefer that. I prefer, here's a card. I wouldn't make it a rule. Just be, hey, here's 1 card for the 2 of you. Oh, can we have 2? Oh, sure, here's 2. But so you don't have so many cards out. Because the next thing is that, you don't want to buy a million cards. And the cards get taken home all the time at a rate of around 10% a week. We charge $3 for every card. And I will tell you, in 2.5 years, nobody has called me up and said, what's this $3 charge because I didn't return my card?
Except for people who didn't buy anything.
Yeah.
But we always give them the $3 back. Hey, just bring the card back. We'll give you your money back.
So if they walk out the door, we know that they've walked out the door, and we don't have a card in our box at the end of the night. So we just go in there and add $3 and close out the check.
I will tell you one other thing that was a great thing that we did was when we're doing food, we started doing getting phone numbers to text people when they can come pick up their food.
Yeah.
And what that helped us do is if there was something that happened with a check, it was great because we had their phone number. You could always go back and look at it. That helped a lot.
Yeah. So that I was able to use that through the system.
Thank you, Toast.
Yeah, I think so. So if somebody, somebody's card, so just so get some technical side here. When I take a card, I'm swiping it and I'm holding it as a pre-authorization, and then we tie the beer card to it. I PourMyBeer people will hate me. Bill, I know you hate me for this or whatever. I don't understand prepaid cards. I think I'll say it, I've said it before and I'll say it to anybody, I think it's kind of foolish. Why are you limiting a customer to spend at the door before they even tried anything? Why are you saying, oh, here, I only want to spend $20? I don't get that, and nobody's been able to explain it to me better.
I have an explanation.
What is?
There are states like Kansas that they don't allow credit on a beer card, so they do have to legally do.
Notwithstanding in some sort of legal restriction, an open-ended authorization credit card, the customer will spend what they feel like they should spend without any pre-limits determined before they walk in the door. So I don't do preloaded cards. I don't ever see us doing preloaded cards. We do gift cards through Toast. So we can sell you a $25 gift card through Toast that you can give to a friend and they could just pay $25. That's a way that you can, limit spending, especially for groups. But in my estimation, you want to have that authorization open-ended, and you want to allow the customer to just spend what they're going to spend.
One other thing I want to say, which has been great, is I use this a lot. Data don't lie. From an operations perspective, especially when you're creating craft beer for a lot of different people, what we think is going to sell sometimes is not what actually sells. So it's great to have the data, and data like repours, how many people never went back to that particular beer is incredibly important to us, and we get all that great data. And again, you just know exactly what's going on. I can tell you what the best-selling beer in here is. We can tell you what the worst-selling beer is, and that's probably one we need to phase out.
We can also tell you what's the best repoured beer. The beer that a customer goes to, uses the card once, pours something, and then comes back. That's something that PourMyBeer developed. So we get that from the back end that PourMyBeer has been developing. You're getting a lot better at it. I told Josh the other day.
Thank you.
It was something they've been developing over the last year, and it's getting a lot better. So repours are really important to us.
The second section here is very short, so my next question is, thank you for sharing the lessons, but was there anything that you faced that was like a really big struggle or challenge the very first month when you opened that you're not going to do for the second location or will do differently? Was there any struggle? It doesn't have to be PourMyBeer related. Anything?
I think just
building-wise?
it was. We were very lucky when you have a good base business to start from. It's so much easier to work from that. We talked a lot about efficiency, getting better at the front door, creating the second spot here. I think was a big improvement. But I don't know off the top of my head if I could come up with one that was.
I think the one thing that I would say that we got better at that you have to have a plan for is that how much beer do you have? Now see, this cooler right behind you right here, that's the kegs that are servicing this. But then we have, in our brewery, we have a very big walk-in cooler that has approximately 350 kegs in it. Because we also make beer to sell to the outside here. So you have to have a strategy of how you're going to organize your beer if you're going to be 40 taps. And you're going to have a strategy of how you organize your backups so that you don't have a handle that goes dark for a while. If there's one stat that we can point to and prove, which is really interesting, between the four walls, we're all pretty even and competitive on a sales basis. But if this one is 9 and this one is 10, this one will sell more. It's the strangest thing in the world from a dollar standpoint.
People love the experience, the variety, and the appearance of options. And
Exactly.
I think if they go to a wall and there's a lot of stuff, oh, this is great, and they just pour, they keep pouring until they find something they like. They find something they like, they re-pour. That's where you get the re-pour stats from.
So if you have your business and you have 30 taps and all of a sudden 4 or 5 of them don't have anything on them, or they're duplicates or something like that, you're kind of degrading the concept would be my point. So have a strategy to keep yourself on top of that. Because at first the strategy was, I run to the forklift, I put the forklift in, I jam it into a pallet, I lift it, and I carry a keg out here. And it really wasn't a very good strategy.
And the problem challenge here is it takes a little bit of time before you can restock something when you run out. So you better be on top of your data to see when it's going to run out, and you better have stuff in the pipeline. At least for us, that's critically important, because when the economy opened back up again and we were overwhelmed with business, we ran out of a lot of beer. No one could have predicted it, but that's what happened.
Yeah, to give you an idea, on a Saturday in high season, we'll change 25 of the 40 taps easy, if not more. So where do you have that 25? Be prepared for that. We have a shelving system in there and a back system, and now we have a Saturday routine, and because that works for us, and we have a Wednesday routine where a guy comes in very early and basically backs up and stacks and puts stuff in there to be ready for the Saturdays, and we have developed a very workable strategy to make sure we have very, very little time between keg blowing and keg changing.
I hope I'm not going to put you on the spot, but when you were planning out your cooler, did you have a specific square footage in, like a plan for a specific tap, so you know?
Yeah, I did. I mean, we knew that, you better always recommend that you hire a professional to do your tap system. From our experience, I knew how wide a keg was. I knew how many kegs I was going to have on tap, upper and lower. So I knew how much space that was, and I knew that I needed a back area. So in this particular case, that's an 8x24 cooler for 40 taps.
Okay.
I think that would be a very good standard. The next one we're making is actually 9x23, just because of the room size. But that strikes me as the right for 40.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. What was your experience with self-pour technology with the first-timers? So you opened your doors, you obviously got a lot of self-pour first-timers. Luckily, Navigator Taproom made it a little bit easier because they were here earlier, and so was Tapster, both locations.
Right.
So some people knew the self-pour, but still it was pretty unique. I remember the first 2 weeks I saw majority of people were like, what's self-pour? So how did you deal with that, and what's your advice to some of our operators that are going to be opening their doors?
Steve, why don't you
I would say, the first thing, as we talked about before, is give that, Greg called the opening script, I call it the spiel. Give them their spiel and hit them 2 and 3 times with the spiel. That's why I hit him in the front and coming here. I think definitely it was very helpful to have the mock-up that we had, just where to put your card. It's amazing you tell people that and then they still wave it in front. It creates some problems. So it's just having people on the floor to constantly help and teach how to pour. That's the big thing you got to do.
We made a big deal, which is sort of a separate concept from PourMyBeer and Toast, that we didn't want to be a tipping facility any longer. Steve and I don't like tipping, and yet we've owned restaurants and bars that tipping is a big part of our lives. And I think, I personally, we're the only country in the world that has a tipping system, and that I've never quite understood. We really wanted to get rid of it. And part of the reason we want to get rid of it is what I have seen and what my experience when I would travel Europe is that tipping creates customer and servant. PourMyBeer and no tipping creates customer and helper. They're on equal footing. They're there to help and instruct, to enjoy with you, not drinking, but all of our people that work as what we call guides are going around, hey, you should try this, you should try that. Here's how you pour. Let me fix that pour for you. You didn't do it right. everything is helpful and experimental and not talking down to, but talking to the same. Because there's no tip involved. There's no, I got to sell this person more money so I make more money. There's none of that. We are going to do that at every one of our facilities going forward. We do it at our current facility that we reopened. It takes a lot of education. Some legacy bartenders are going to hate it, and they will never agree to it. And we had that experience in our company as well.
And they will leave, and that's okay.
And that's okay. But we believe America, if the pandemic showed restaurant workers anything, trying to prove to the government that you really make $50,000 a year, not the 15 on your W-2, is a hard thing to do. And we want to do that. So that's part of what allows PourMyBeer to work so well, is to go up there and help people out. And I'll close this answer by, it's not just the people you employ. Steve was saying about the Sherpas, the ambassadors, the people that have been here before that like it. One of the things that was so gratifying to us, and we read a Yelp review where a customer was standing next to another customer, and all of a sudden they started talking about beer. Hey, what should I have? What should I do? Hey, I had that. Oh, you had that? I had this. Oh, that's great. Doing that. And all of a sudden they were talking to it, and the Yelp reviewer said, I started talking to people I never knew about the product in front of me, and I didn't know I needed that, but it was great to go out to a community where I feel I could talk about the product in front of me. And so you create that atmosphere in the room that people are helping one another, and it will go beyond just the people you employ. It will become your customers.
That is so very true. I have to agree with that. So we're hopping into our third section here, which is really their ongoing success. There is a reason why they're opening the second location, and this venue is really amazing. If you come here during the regular day and you see the efficiency happening in the real time, it's just fascinating. So I definitely highly recommend that. My first question here to Steve and Greg is, how long did it take you to meet your ROI, which is return on investment?
We're still waiting for that. Obviously the pandemic has had a huge impact. It's been such a strange couple of years. When things are opened up, we were like, oh, this is fantastic. The last 10 weeks with Omicron have been really difficult, as anybody in the business will tell you. It's been really difficult, especially December and January. Things are starting to get better again. But we see the basics that are there, that something is happening, and we feel very strongly that we will eventually get to the returns that we want. We are profitable. We were profitable during both pandemic years, which is amazing. And we do see the basics there to keep going. We don't think it's going to stop. We think that people are really embracing this concept, and we're going to continue based on, obviously, the ebbs and flows of month to month were a little scary here the last few, but we feel very strongly that we're going to be just fine.
It's interesting because we all know that buying the system isn't nothing, right? I mean, it's $50,000, $60,000, $40,000, whatever it's going to be. You have a monthly cost for that. It's not nothing to serve PourMyBeer. So how do you come up with a return on investment or look at it from just PourMyBeer? I think the only way you can do that is look at how much does it cost to have a staff to do what we're doing. I'll just say in general, in a busy week, we're going to do 75 kegs of business, 60 kegs of business, something like that. Can you imagine a bar in your experience that does 60, 70 business, and then figure out how much labor that really is across 7 days, and just deal with the serving of the beer, and then amateurize your cost of PourMyBeer over your lease. And then amateurize your monthly, which is, not a significant monthly for what it is, and obviously you got to pay a point of sale monthly. I don't know how you wouldn't come back with a ROI in the months, not years.
Yeah, in terms of PourMyBeer, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I was like, we got to make the beer, we got to quit, but we got so many other factors that I was kind of answering that too.
But from a PourMyBeer perspective, you can do your own math that way, and see that your cost of what you would have is labor, and what this is labor, and what it costs to put a physical structure and physical plant together versus what it had. And I don't know. I would think it's less than a year.
But the big thing is, Greg talked about, we like to talk about the step function of labor. When you're in the restaurant business, the bar business, when you do X amount of sales, you're at this level. And then you've got to bring in the other staff, which is going to cost you a Y, and you got to get above that. So you keep adding people. The most amazing thing about a PourMyBeer system is what Greg talked about earlier, is the number of people you have to add to serve the beer doesn't take anything. We might have a cleanup person that we're adding, or a manager fills in or something like that. That's the real power behind this, is the ability to serve. On a summer day when we're packed outside, we might have 500 people in here, and it's effortless. I'll give you a perfect example. We've been doing this a long time. Every table in a restaurant or a bar has a table number. We don't have table numbers. We don't need to do that. That's amazing if you think about it. There's no sections. There's no, there's nobody running the food everything we have done here is with the idea that people are going to do it themselves. And the most amazing thing are the reviews when people tell us how great our service is. We don't have service, at least not in the traditional sense. So we can take care of people, we can help people without being in that server-customer relationship. We're here to help. Great point I like to make is when I was thinking about this concept, I would go into the Apple store. If you've ever been in the Apple store, it's very experiential. People are there to help you. They're not there to sell you. You don't queue up. You don't get in line to buy. If they want to buy, oh, you want to do that? Okay, great. And that's part of the service model of being experiential, to have people there to help, but they're not selling you. And I think that's a key part of this.
Hopping into the next one, how do you keep the cost of production low?
That's a different question.
It is a very different question.
So
because everything is going up.
Yeah.
So the cost of production, you mean in the tap room?
Yeah, in the tap room.
Well, obviously, here in Chicago, there's a unicorn out there, and it's called the $15 an hour worker. They don't exist anymore. So you basically have 18 and up as sort of the wage that is now established here in Chicago. So that does bring challenges. Like I said, we've met those challenges by our pricing strategy, but it also means that you hopefully are finding people that don't treat your job as a way station. So the way you're going to keep your ROI up, and the way you're going to keep the business going, is to make sure you hire people well, train them, make them feel valuable, which has always been the case, but even more so because now they cost more per hour, and the training cost to replace them is huge. So I would recommend being better at human resources than you were yesterday. That would be my first thing. The other thing I would recommend is that you take a real hard look at what your pricing strategy is. I'm a Pied Piper of believing that there is no tipping. You've heard me say that. But I realize that some people find that hard to break. Okay, make sure you're fairly pricing the product for curating a better than average program, unless your strategy is not. Make sure you understand that you are, as though you are not, listing pint prices, you're listing ounce prices. Don't give away pennies. Don't think that somebody is going to think of you as coming back because they spent $4 less. That's not going to happen. You want to price fairly, but you also want to price realizing that you're giving out a better than average premium product. Nothing says quality like the cost, like price. Mm-hmm. And
we believe that.
And PourMyBeer allows you to do that. Put some better beers on. Charge some more money. So what if a customer doesn't, some people want to know how many ounces does a customer have. On average, we could say that a customer pours somewhere around 18 to 22 ounces is the sweet spot per customer. That's somewhere what they're doing. How much is that worth? Want to do some math on that? Go ahead. We like to look at it a different way. Every card that comes in here might be we believe it's about 1.6 people on per card, the way we've done our math. And we are in the mid-50s or mid-40s per card. That's not a lot of money when you think about it for 1.6 people. I went out to dinner, took my mother out to dinner on Saturday night or Friday night, and spent $200 for 3 people at Cheesecake Factory. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, there's a lot of opportunity for price in this market. And PourMyBeer allows you to put more price into your product to get more value. So make sure you have great staff and make sure you're pricing yourself not to think that low price brings customer back. $3 beers, can't make money that way.
Can't play that game. Another hidden benefit to this, what we're doing in PourMyBeer, is brings in a lot of groups because you don't have to worry about that awkward part of the end of a meal when you got to figure out how to split a check. I'm sure everybody here has a person they go out with. Let's say it's Greg, and not that you are this way, but you got. Let's say Greg's a guy who always orders more than everybody else. You're always paying the Greg tax every time you go out with him. And that's not true, by the way. That's not correct. But anyway, like you're always like, we got to split the check. That guy had dessert. He had this. There's none of that here. There's like, I'm doing my own thing. I'm paying for I'm going to have one beer and that's it. And you leave with one beer and that's it. So I think that's a real hidden benefit to this system. And you don't have the bill at the end. It doesn't exist. So it's a real benefit, and we do encourage a lot of groups come in here, and that's one of the big reasons they choose it.
We know that through Toast Point of Sale that on any given week, about 15% of our customers are repeat. In other words, they're members that use us here. But what's an even more interesting statistic is that if you think about that 15%, right? And we generally check out about 10% of the customers where that customer wants a receipt. So that's 25%. Now, those are the only people that saw their bill here. The rest of them never saw a bill. They never saw, unless they were looking at the screen on the last thing and showed $26. When they walked out, they didn't realize that tax got added to it, which we got to pay JB Pritzker. But they never see a check, and they have found that comfortable. They could, if they were a member, they would actually get an email when their check was closed out, showing them how much they would spend and in detail. And I know the members like that, and having more members is a good thing. But the majority of people come here never see their check, and
until it shows up on their credit card.
They see the number, how much they spent. So they kind of value the concept versus how much they spent. Oh, I spent $50. I spent $75. I spent $80. Oh, that was worth it. Mm-hmm. Versus, steak was $32.50. I mean, there's none of that here.
That's awesome. Halfway through the third section, so my next one, and this is a really big one for the PourMyBeer community, especially those that are getting started. Let's talk about the labor. Mm-hmm. You are a little different. Your facility is a little different, but we get this question a lot. Like, how do I go about scheduling? How many people do I need to schedule for Friday, Saturday night? Like, how do I go about that? Any tips on the labor?
So, base labor here is one check-in, one concierge, one utility. And that can service us a couple days. It can service us on a Tuesday. That can service on a Wednesday. You add to the door that then can swing between door and concierge on Thursday. And then on Friday, you might add 2 to the door, 2 to the concierge, and 1 to the utility. And then maybe 1 more utility and maybe 1 more swing on a Saturday. Sunday we go back to kind of Thursday scheduling. I know that was pretty quick, but really you got to break down how you're doing your. I was just talking to a gentleman here that actually had his check-in system next to the screens. So obviously that would just be 1 person, and maybe 2. So it really depends again to your physical structure and to what departments you are assigning people to and what it is. I have seen and have dealt with poor beer concepts, not PourMyBeer, that try to get away with a minimum wage worker at a stand. In fact, Pete, our other partner here, and Steve and I went to a competitor out in the suburbs, and
he's right there.
Where is he? There he is.
Right there.
And the 2 of them are like looking at me and going, "We're going to do this? This is stupid." Because basically you had a 16-year-old girl at the front who had no idea about beers, really didn't know anything about, what you were pouring, could barely function at giving you a card, and you felt like, what the hell am I doing here? And I made the comment to the 2 of them as they were like looking at me like I'm an idiot because I wanted to, put these walls in or whatever, and they're like, I go, well, we'll train people better and we'll figure out the system better than just throwing some minimum age worker at the door and thinking you have a staff. You need to have people that are smarter swifter, more personable, and you need to pay them more for this concept to work.
And better trained. Actually, I was not against. I was like, we need a spiel. I think
need
that's
a spiel,
where I said they don't have a spiel. There was no spiel.
There was no spiel. There was nothing like, here's your card. Whatever.
Gotta have a spiel.
And PourMyBeer even has a spiel, script, whatever you want to call it. We have that available from a few other PourMyBeer family members.
And there was another
we can
local.
provide that.
There was another local pouring beer concept up in the northern suburbs that had the same thing going on and was closed in about 6 months. About 6 months.
Yeah.
They were closed. They just didn't do the business. You can literally ruin yourself by just not having really swift and smart people at the front helping people along. Don't think you can get away with less money. It's not the number of staff in a PourMyBeer concept. It's the quality of staff you hire. And just hire great people. I mean, I can say that, hire people that you like, hire people that are friendly, hire people that are knowledgeable. And frankly, to be honest with you, they just have to like beer or cocktails or whatever it is. They don't need to be a cicerone. They just have to like and be good people.
So my next question is, and this is a perfect transition, how do you hire for those great people? Because they all want to hire them. Some of them are, already have their doors open.
In this industry,
and some of them are about to open.
In this environment, it's never been more difficult. You had to hire people who were personable and who wanted to find friends. So we've had a lot of training over the years of knowing who's going to work better than not. And you really have to apply yourself to do that and really commit yourself to learning that it's not the technical side. I don't care about how many drinks a bar. When we hired bartenders, I would be told that this bartender can serve 50 people at once and lift and bounce buildings in a single bounce. He's Superman. He's great. And I'm like, he's not that fun to talk to. Mm-hmm. And somebody working that hard doesn't really talk to anybody. And it's really great that we can get those drinks out, but what's the other side? So look for that. And then you have to train for that. And you have to be great at human resources for that. And the people you hire as managers, your leaders, have to like people. They really have to like people. That's in this industry. You'd be amazed at how many restaurant managers don't like people. You have to like people. And, you have to like all kinds. Not just your friends, not just the people you agree with, not just that. You have to like all people, all backgrounds, all diversity. Hire your managers to actually like people, and that will flow to your employees. And then people will stay with you. We have a group of 12 managers in our company through our other businesses. I think the least senior is 14 years. And we have people like Pete and myself that are plus 20. Manny is 14 years, and he's the least.
Wow.
So we keep people a long time, and we keep them happy, and we let them enjoy their job. So that's how you do it. It's not easy today.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now let's dive into the next question on how do you pay your staff. You already mentioned the non-tipping facility, but you do pay above that average here.
We started with Bitcoin.
Can I work for you guys? I didn't hear this.
Like I said, we pretty much starting wage is $18. Mm-hmm. We have some people at 20 and 22. Mm-hmm. Everything's on check. There is no cash. There's no cash in this facility whatsoever. Your managers will love that. There's no counting cash at the end of the night. Computer tells you what your deposit is.
The easiest closeout we've ever had.
You walk out the door with your customers here. That's another great thing about PourMyBeer and Toast point of sale integration. But we use a
the market is determining it, and if you're lucky enough to get people to apply for a job, I think really focusing on the different staff interaction, I think is really important. That you're here to help. You're not necessarily here to serve. We think it's a better way to hire people. We think it's a better way to run your business. But that's a personal decision.
Just so it's an hourly wage.
Yeah.
And the other good thing is that we have made it so that the schedule is, you pretty much, like if you're scheduled for 32 hours, you're going to work 32 hours. Mm-hmm. Maybe 31.
So no sending people back home if it's not busy?
No need, because you haven't scheduled up and it's not busy tonight. Well, I need the 3 people that are here, the 4 people that are here.
Gotcha.
So unlike bartenders and servers, can I be cut early? Can I go home early? That doesn't exist here. People are scheduled for a shift. They work a shift. They know they're going to work 32 hours. They know what their pay is. They can budget their lives.
Definitely. Great. Love it. Last two questions before we get the audience talk. So how do you set your pricing structure? You already mentioned it a little bit for the beverage, but let's talk a bit more about food since a lot of the operators
Steve's great at pricing.
Yeah?
Am I?
Yeah. You're Mr. Pricing.
I think...
Let's talk about the pricing.
What we started at, what we ended up at, we feel like what Greg was saying before, no one's doing the math. I think when you look at it, it reminds me of like if you ever got gas back in the day and before credit cards were so prevalent, you had $20, like I'm going to get $20 worth of gas. That's pretty much what it is. What does a $5 pour look like? That's how people, I think about this. A $5 pour for some of our lower price beers is like $6. Oh, well, that's pretty good. You know, that's actually in line with what you're going to pay in this neighborhood. So I think we try to price things in a way that people get a decent amount for a reasonable price. And again, there's no ups, no extras. There's no tip to add on. Mm-hmm. And I love when people say, "Oh, this seems kind of expensive." I poured a pint. It was $9. Now they poured a hazy IPA, which is high in alcohol. We're not going to be there to explain to them that, well, normally that's not poured in a pint glass. It's poured in a maybe a snifter or even a 12-ounce glass or whatever, and then you're adding tip. I went to another brewery and had the same type of beer that I'm drinking right now, a hazy IPA. It was a 10-ounce pour for $8.50. I got out of there, it was $12 with tip and everything, and I'm like, we need to increase our prices because the price on ours was 74 cents. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I think people have this perception that doesn't necessarily jive with reality. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like you can talk to that a little bit. We had one beer concierge that would ask it seems pricey, friend of his. He said, are you tipping on that? Well, no. Think about it that way. Yeah. So you do get some resistance because that frontline price might seem high if you're pouring a full pint. But what you don't see is if you're pouring a sampler of something, like when you go into a brewery and you get a flight of beer, it's actually costing you, for the same beer, it's costing you 80 to 90 cents an ounce. And because it's the labor, you get the quantity discount when you pour a pint at a bar. We don't have that. It's the same price. That encourages the experience. It encourages people to try different beers, find something you like. So I think overall, we feel like we're in the right spot. We probably have a little more room to go up as I look at it this week, but that's a whole other conversation. So I think you can be a little more bullish and you're able to explain it away because, again, we're not a tipping facility. So you're really saving that 20% going into the cost of the product.
If you don't mind, and if it's not a secret, can you share with us a food versus beverage cost? What's your percentage here? If it's not a secret?
Yeah, we're a third food. And we hope in our new concept to be closer to 45%. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're a brewery, so we're never going to be 50-50. Mm-hmm. We did partner up with Charlie McKenna and Lily Hughes, who does our food. He's a two-time national award-winning barbecue champion. One of only 5 people to do that. He's a great guy. We really enjoy working with him. He's going to create 4 different food concepts at our next location. Our next location is actually going to have 4 breweries, an alternate beverage wall, and 4 different food concepts to give it more of a beer hall meets food hall concept than this current concept is. We hope to get closer to 40-45% with food at that concept.
Amazing.
I think also, though, I've talked to somebody at a PourMyBeer concept where they're like 15% food. They're just doing charcuterie or cheese or whatever you want to call it. You can make money at your concept. There is no magic number in what I'm trying to say, food.
Yeah.
And it really depends because we got a lot of labor pushing that food out.
Having great food drives your beer business, obviously.
Yeah, and it does help. So you got to find the right mixture. You got to sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and figure it out. I don't think there's a magic answer there to what percentage works.
I think that they can agree after they tried your food that it's amazing. I know in for a third helping, so it's definitely great food. My last question of the day before we pass the word to the audience: what's next for District Brew Yards? What's next? How many more locations? In Colorado, maybe?
You're only,
Yes.
I was going to say, you're only as good as your last one. So we're going to go out to our new location if that works. We've got a couple other ideas in the works for where else we can go, but that's going to be our focus for the next few years is just to grow brew yards. I think one of the hardest things is trying to find breweries that want to work with us. We don't know how easy that's going to be. We did have several that were interested in our new location. We will be adding a newer brewery to our roster, so that's good. So we're only limited by how quickly we can do a deal, I think. It's really.
So whoever's listening to this recording later, just so you know, these two guys have someone to talk to if you have a brewery.
I will say also what's next for us is that I preluded a little bit, but Bill, Tanya, Josh Goodman, who's the owner of PourMyBeer, is not with us here today. I'm probably a little bit of a pain in their ass when it comes to pushing PourMyBeer to do more in regards to integration. Toast has been a partner of them for a while. The pandemic has affected Toast point of sale very much in the amount of labor they can put towards new development, but I understand that's loosening up a little bit too, because there are some real advantages that I see in getting more integrated together. Most specifically in, I've talked to Josh and PourMyBeer, and I pushed them along to like customer check-in. Can we create a kiosk for customer check-in? Josh talked to me about that just last month. It's one of his pet projects that he really wants to see happen. That might be coming down the pike. I mentioned that I've been pushing very hard from both Toast and PourMyBeer's thing to tie kiosk ordering for food, so that a customer could go to a screen and order food tied into the beer card automatically instead of having to pull out a credit card again. Those are things that because we have so much experience, and Josh comes to us a lot, and it's really a great partnership that I have with him. We're able to point out our years of experience in the restaurant business and ways to make PourMyBeer better. Right? The one example was when we first opened up, the way Toast and PourMyBeer was communicating was confusing as all hell. And I had to sit down and I wrote a one page like this is fucked, and we need to do this better. And it wasn't but about 30-60 days later that it was better. And then it got even more better, and then it got solved. So I think that is one thing to keep in mind if you're going to be in the PourMyBeer family, is that they are constantly innovating and constantly getting better. And I know myself that I have been pushing them. I don't know if any of those things I just said is going to happen. I'm not promising anything. But just to let you know, they're at least very open to the conversation, to always making their system better to work with whatever way you see fit. They've made a lot of changes so far, and I think they'll make a lot more changes in the near future.
For us, your success is our success, and PourMyBeer is obviously grateful to have you in the PourMyBeer family. We are excited to see the second venue, and I'm still hopeful that there's going to be a third venue in Colorado and then fourth in Czech Republic.
Funny thing is our second venue is a block and a half from PourMyBeer's warehouse.
Yeah.
Josh, the owner, had been talking to us for about 4 years. You gotta take this place.
Actually, yeah, that's the reason we looked at it. Actually.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta go there. You kept every email was "Go to Wheeling," was the tagline. And finally, we took a look at it and said, you're right. So we'll see what happens. We're gonna see what happens.
Well, Steve is not here. I definitely 100% want to thank you so much for taking your time to educate everybody who has came to our workshop. And while he's not here, Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
I really appreciate that you both took time to educate everybody here, answer the questions. We will definitely be getting more questions through the emails, and we will answer those as we go. I do want to also thank everybody here for attending this event. We had so much fun. Hopefully you can still drink some more beer, take advantage of the fact that we are paying, and hang out for another half an hour or so if you want to. We'll play some music, we'll have some fun, take some fun pictures. And I do want to point out, the PourMyBeer team will be coming back to Chicago here in May, because we're going to a National Restaurant Association show. So in case that, and hopefully these guys will visit us in our booth, we'll be in a booth 11342. So in case, and this is by the way Bar Stage Lakeside Center, so in case that any of you is coming to NRA in May, please make sure to visit us. We would absolutely love to see you. Thank you so much, and one round of applause for